Good evening and welcome to the Standing Committee of the Durham District School Board for Monday, October 5th. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Do we have any declarations of interest? I see none. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Thatcher, Trustee Edwards, all in favor? Thank you. That takes us to a statement. I'm just going to need 1 second. So we're just going to do some introductions while I locate a statement that I am to read.
Thank you, through you, Chair Lindquist. It's a pleasure tonight to be introducing our new Corporate Associate Director, David Wright. David joins us with incredible experience, both through the province of Ontario and the internal audit system, and most recently 7 years in SBO at Lakehead District School Board. Today is his very first day, and so we wanted to show him the full wonder of DDSB by making his first day a standing committee meeting tonight. So we're just thrilled to have him here, already making great contributions at Admin Council today, and very warm welcome to you, David. I'm going to also say that we'll be taking care of a few different announcements this evening, and one of the things that we're going to be talking about in a moment is, of course, the interim associate director. But prior to that, in August, prior to our first meeting where we came together to be in person, we had another senior staff member leave as well, and that's Superintendent Malia. And we didn't have the opportunity in September to acknowledge her departure at a standing or board meeting, and did feel that it was very important to acknowledge the many years of service that she did for the Durham District School Board. We did invite her back virtually to be able to acknowledge her, and unfortunately she is well on her way in terms of responsibilities in her new position and wasn't available to join us virtually, but we will be sending her an acknowledgement of our gratitude through the mail, and so she should be receiving that soon. So that was another update that certainly wanted to share publicly.
Thank you for that. Our loss is that board's gain, and we will definitely miss her here. I'm just going to return to item 4 on the agenda, a statement. So this is a board statement in relation to an article on DurhamRegion.com. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, we would like to make a statement to clarify any misconceptions arising from an article posted on September 21st, 2020 on DurhamRegion.com. The board's termination of the prior integrity commissioner did not stop or obstruct any active investigations that she may have had underway. Any investigation that she was handling remains active, and the complete file materials have been transferred to the board's interim integrity commissioner, Jan Parnega, in accordance with the provisions of the board's code of conduct. The Board of Trustees remains committed to holding each other to the highest standard of ethical conduct under the code. Thank you. Okay. So we would like to acknowledge the work of I'm going to get your title once right before you leave. Oh my goodness. Acting Associate Director Kisco. I'm sorry that took so long.
We'll accept that.
My apologies. So I know that there's a presentation for you, and we'll just come. I'll just say a couple of words while you get your microphone. So we recognize that this has been a tumultuous year, and you have helped sort of steer us through a very, very difficult time in terms of budget cuts, in terms of a pandemic. You have given us far more than we could have reasonably expected, and I know on behalf of the Board of Trustees, we thank you for every bit of work that you have put in on behalf of all of the students in the system. So thank you so very much for that.
And I certainly echo Chair Lindquist's comments to you, Carla. And you came in, we knew it would be for a short period of time because you were coming back in terms of dedication to public education in Ontario. But you would have never known by your behavior that you would be here only for a short period of time. Your sense of dedication, your sense of commitment to the team, to the work of the district, and your unbelievable perseverance in just getting the work done. It was incredibly inspiring to all of us. We have been so privileged to have worked with you during this period of time, and we appreciate the fact that you stayed much longer than you ever anticipated. And as a result, we've all grown so much as a team because of your contributions to us and to the district. And I know that the students of this district have benefited through your stewardship of the financial responsibility within your portfolio, as well as the facility and all of the work that you've done. So we're very pleased to present you this token of the appreciation from Durham District School Board. Thank you for everything.
It really has been my privilege, and I want to thank everybody for bringing me in as an incredible team. I felt really honored to be part of this incredible professional group of individuals. So thank you to my senior team colleagues, to all the departments I work with, and to the Board of Trustees, who I've been so impressed with. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, really. Thank you for everything. We deeply and genuinely appreciate all that you have done. I would like to move, we do not have community presentations tonight, as far as I know, so that makes sense. Nothing at number 6. That brings us to number 7 on the agenda, DDSB presentation, DDSB at home with Superintendent Georgette Davis, please.
Thank you, Chair Lundquist, and through you. This report can be found on pages 1 through 18 in your agenda package. The purpose of the report is to provide an update on DDSB at home. During the next few minutes, we will provide an update on the teaching and learning that has been taking place during the last 20 school days at DDSB at home. We will share some of our teaching and learning foci, professional learning, technology journey, and communication plan. During the last month, we've been focused on fostering partnerships, building community, responding to feedback, and a blended focus on real-time, flex-time learning, and well-being. Appendix 3 in your package tells the DDSB at home story by numbers. For example, 15,680, the number of students. 8,400, the number of emails received and responded to during the first 3 weeks of school, and 1,000 plus, the number of staff. The process of teaching and learning at DDSB at home, a virtual space, has brought challenges and opportunities. One example of an opportunity is real-time and flex-time instructional time. We've received feedback from students and families, specifically as it relates to our learners in early years. We recognize that learning at DDSB at home involves a focused amount of screen time, and we're working to refine our instructional practices in order to engage our learners during this time. We continue to refine and shift our practices and learn and respond to our students, staff, and family needs. See Appendix 4 for more details on real-time and flex time. The learning truly is in the work, and the feedback supports our learning and refining of the work. I would like to welcome our presenters this evening. Daniel DeNike, Principal of the 7-8 and Gifted Campus. Paul Reed, Vice Principal of the 3-4 Campus. Chris Conley, Manager, Research Assessment and Accountability. And Tim Ralph, Education Officer for Innovative Education. They will share some information related to DDSB at Home Elementary.
From the very beginning, we have been focused on collecting information so we can both document and learn as we go. Looking at Appendix 3 in your package, I'll highlight some of the data we've gathered that describes the work so far in supporting families and staff. Here you can see that the enrollment at DDSB at Home has been increasing since the end of August. As has been mentioned, we have over 1,000 staff supporting our virtual education campuses in both the elementary and secondary campuses. These staff also include classroom teachers, as well as the full range of supports from inclusive student services supports, clerical supports, and others. Additionally, our technical services staff have shared over 12,000 devices with our students and have responded to over 8,000 email inquiries. Next slide.
My name is Paul Reed. I'm the Vice Principal for DDSB at Home for the grade 3-4 campus. There have been some incredible things happening at DDSB at Home, things that aren't necessarily reflected in the numbers or the statistics. In the first month, DDSB at Home has focused on fostering partnerships with educators, students, and families as we engage on the virtual learning journey together. As we continue to receive a great deal of feedback from various stakeholders, we're working to respond to that feedback and implement as much as we can in order to improve our practices and efficiencies. We are committed to building community and connections through Google Classrooms, virtual conferencing, emails, and phone calls. Over the past month, DDSB at Home educators have worked to establish virtual classroom routines and norms. This has required staff to shift and refine instructional practices to meet student needs and align with the virtual learning model. Staff continue to expand and explore the elements of real-time and flex-time learning in order to engage students and maximize the instructional time each day. And finally, to ensure a smooth transition, programming has had a blended focus on wellness and academics.
One of our important foci, trustees, was to create an everyday school experience that's online. We often hear ourselves called the virtual school, but there's really nothing virtual about our school. We're an actual school, and we meet daily. One of the traditions that started this year was something that we quietly call Project Razzmatazz, but quickly became very public. And that's our daily announcements time for students through grades kindergarten to grade 8. Project Razzmatazz, or Campus Connect, or several other names depending on which grade you're watching, gathers between 2,500 and 3,000 students a day to learn the norms, set the tone, and begin their school day. And this is a brief video about Project Razzmatazz.
Each morning, the Innovative Education team, along with the administration of the various DDSB at Home schools, brings to you Campus Connect. We always begin our Campus Connects with our land acknowledgement and national anthem, and then we include morning messages or announcements from our DDSB at Home admin. We include lessons on character education and also provide students with relevant activities that they can work on and then bring to their teacher when they join their class or their live meets. We make sure we talk about zones of regulation to give students that common language, and we chat with each other on how to do that. Finally, we finish up with a movement break to get the students heart rates going and getting them ready for a day of learning.
Project Razzmatazz, as I said, brings together about 2,500 students every day, lasts about half an hour, and is led by our vice principals and principals from all our campuses, as well as from teachers and from facilitators in the innovation department, and is a great way and a great example of how we've not only set norms and tried to recreate what school is like, but to create what a school of the 21st century is like.
I'm Danielle tonight, lead principal for DDSB at Home Elementary and the 78 Gifted Campus. The feedback continues to be encouraging from all our stakeholders. Our students' feedback holds the key to transitioning to a virtual and engaging learning environment. Here, they have shared their experiences from the first month at DDSB at Home. Based on these quotes, students are comfortable, they're excited, and they're enjoying their learning environment. We have also received areas of improvement, and we are using this information to plan our next steps. Next slide. One challenge we needed to overcome was aligning our virtual instructional leaderships across 6 campuses and with over 600 teachers. This led to the creation of our campus hub led by our teachers. Our goal and the purpose of creating hub leaders, who are teacher leaders from DDSB at Home, is to align our professional development and instructional practices amongst our large faculty so we can set directions. Here, the hub leaders create a collaborative culture amongst our large body of educators and help in creating a sense of purpose and vision for each campus. They also build and sustain relationships where hub leaders foster and facilitate collaborative teams that recognize the individual strengths and needs, as well as use their ideas and feedback to create dynamic educational programming with each hub. They also help develop the organization. The hubs in themselves create clarity of school and campus goals. Hubs have fostered the development of building and sustaining a professional learning community amongst teachers. In some cases, like the 7-8 campus, the hubs create timetables that maximize the virtual learning experience. They also help in improving the instructional program. Hub leaders share our collective vision and direction for DDSB at Home by providing information, modeling, and collaborating on best instructional practices, informed assessments to drive the program, and create consistency and alignment with school instruction. And finally, they help in securing accountability. Hub leaders assist administrators in aligning our school goals with instructional practice, look at data offered in assessments, and gather feedback and ideas on our next steps.
Teaching and learning online is new not only for the Durham Board all day, but for all schools in the province. And we're learning as we work. All departments in our board are providing a variety of supports for the DDSB at Home staff. These include DDSB on-demand learning, which is offered through our professional learning hub, where teachers can log in at any time and take courses that have been pre-created for them by facilitators across the board. As well, our staff in the DDSB at Home schools have been participating in after-school training. Office hours offered throughout the week, not only by the innovation and tech departments, but also by curriculum, by equity, and other departments in the board. NTIP and teachers new to the role have been receiving training as well as needed. A deeper learning series of workshops, which will be held on alternating Wednesday afternoons during the student flex time for all DDSB at Home elementary staff, will be led by the equity, innovation, and curriculum departments with representatives from all departments in the board. This will be held in October through December and is an opportunity for deep learning and to go further than tools and to look more at what does online learning look like in terms of an engaging and rich learning process. Information on this professional development has been circulated to all parents in the past week. Later this month, we'll be working with our administrators, not only at the DDSB at Home campus, but we'll be scaling that to all of our administrators to begin the process of understanding what those look-fors are for quality online education.
So in terms of our next steps, We continue to address our technical challenges that we face every day as we continue to build best practices both for staff and for our students. So we are working in collaboration with DDSB at Home, our IT services, and our teacher, librarian leadership teams. We also meet regularly with our curriculum and interdepartmental leadership team to discuss our next steps and to discuss our opportunities. Families and students were invited to participate in a thought exchange, which was open from September 25th to September 30th. And of the 15,000 students at DDSB at Home, we had around 1,300 participants who shared around 2,000 thoughts that were rated 36,000 times. So that with the feedback, we're continuing to summarize the feedback, and it has been very positive, and we're using these themes to support in our next steps in DDSB at Home. We will also be looking forward to transitioning students into DDSB at Home on November 16th. This concludes our report, and we're happy to accept any questions or comments that you may have.
Thank you, Superintendent Davis, and everyone else that added to that. Trustees, do we have questions or comments? We'll go to Trustee Thatcher, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm not sure if this is the forum for my question, but I'll try it anyway. I've had a lot of feedback about our virtual school from the community. Many of the comments are very positive. Our students are enjoying the virtual learning. Teachers are going above and beyond and making positive connections to our students. But there was a concern that came from the families of some of our exceptional students, and there was a concern regarding the length of time that it took for IEPs to be made available to teachers to support their planning. And I was just wondering if you could maybe give me a little bit of information around what our plan was with respect to rolling out those individual education plans.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So we had, at the beginning of the school year, focused really on getting to know our students and working with our teachers and our special education team to work through that process itself. So we know that within the first 20 days, the teachers and the parents are working together to get to know the student. So we are working through that process and continually, because as you know, the individual education plan is a working document and a continuing document. So our goal is to take the information that we have learned about the students during the first few weeks of school when we focused on well-being and getting to know them, and to continue to work through that document. So the parents will be getting the updated individual education plan shortly. However, it will be continued working with and getting to know and assessment and going through that cycle with the students as we go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustees, other questions? So I don't see others, but I have two that are completely unrelated to each other, but I think both relevant. So today was the cutoff for moving. Do we have a sense of what those numbers are like? Or is it too early? Because I recognize the day isn't over, but I feel like we're probably monitoring those numbers as we go. I would be surprised if we are not, so I'm just trying to get a sense of what that looks like, which will lead into the second part of that question.
So thank you, Chair Lundquist, and through you. Today was the cutoff for the transitioning. So we're still working through what those numbers will look like, but we also know that we do have a plan for the students in terms of transitioning to the DDSB at home.
Okay, so do we have, I'm sorry, I'm pushing back a little bit.
That's okay.
Because I recognize you can't give me a firm number, today's the deadline, but are we talking about a dozen, or are we talking about thousands of students that want to move?
Okay, we do have, I think it's around, Director Marsh, correct me if I'm wrong, but around 2,000 students that we have that are right now considering either going to DDSB at home or transitioning from DDSB at home back to in-person. And so we're looking and confirming where those students are, in which schools and what grades to formulate the plan.
And can I presume, and if I can't, you can tell me, can I presume that most of the students are in the elementary panel and not in the secondary panel?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, that's part of that is about the secondary panel. I've had parents express some concern about the impact of moving students into online learning and what that's going to do in terms of options available in secondary schools. And I'm just wondering if we're really clear on how that's unfolding, because several have expressed, and it's anecdotal, and I'm not tied to this as objective truth in a broad sense, but it may be just a limited experience, but that parents are worried about their students not having, their children, not their students, having access to the programs that they need to move forward into university and college. And so I'm just wondering what that impact really is I mean, it matters to every parent and child, of course, but is there a broader question that we need to be looking at?
Thank you, through you, Chair Lindquist. And that was one of the things we identified as why we weren't going to open up the wait list for secondary for quadmester 2 at this stage, as we are concerned about the impact, and we wanted an opportunity to do the analysis in terms of every single school's timetable. We do know right now we are overstaffed in the physical schools at secondary because there was a wave that went to virtual after we had already re-timetabled secondary. So at some point we are going to have to make that an adjustment from a fiduciary perspective and responsibility. However, we are very concerned about students being able to access the courses that they require depending on how large the desired exit is. So right now we have, we've been working with the families, we've been working with the secondary principals and working with secondary teachers for those students who wish to go to virtual. They understand that that isn't available to them at least until February. We have not committed to the February shift as far as after quadmester 2, and we will do that analysis. We're currently, a lot of the programming at secondary is virtual already. So one of the things we're examining are there some creative solutions to address the desire to be fully virtual but not impact the school's timetable, and we're not there yet.
And my second question, and I apologize for taking such a long time to ask one question, is actually about technology. And this is based on my own parental experience. So my understanding is that when there's a technology problem, parents are being required, or children are being required, to go through their teacher to have that addressed. And I am wondering about why we're doing it that way, because that seems to me to be an extra step that makes it more difficult to actually get a resolution.
And through you, actually to you, Madam Chair, it's just an issue of putting a ticket in through the teacher, and that is our normal practice, like pre-COVID world. That was the normal practice, was that it went through and a ticket was actually entered to identify a need or a service requirement or a request for technology. Is that the most efficient way of doing it? We felt it's the easiest way to track it and get the more immediate attention to the issue and the problem. So again, we're always open to suggestions if there are other ways of doing it, but that was discussed with ITS staff and felt that was an easier way to go for efficiency purposes.
May I add on to that? Thank you. So the one thing we will identify is that that was the historical practice, and of course, for 7 to 12, it was a one-to-one model. We know now there are a lot more Chromebooks out there, and we also know that given the situations, we're seeing a lot of challenges with those Chromebooks because we haven't done the renewal process, so much more likely to have some challenges. Coming forward this evening is a report that is actually going to shift the practice, not immediately, but over the longer term in relation to efficiencies and getting the attention Chromebooks require to some extent.
Thank you. Trustees, any questions? I'm just looking online because I sometimes miss those ones. No, I think we're good, so thank you. Oh, sorry, Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you. Going back to your comments about numbers transitioning, so we're talking mostly about our elementary students. Do we have more students who are transitioning from remote to in-school, or is it the other way around? I'm very curious to know that.
Through you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, it is mostly students who are transitioning to DDSB at home, virtual.
And are they giving reasons for that?
There are various reasons. Some of the students and families are transitioning because that is actually, they had changed their minds as school has started, and so we had to have a process to do that in terms of transitioning. So there's various reasons for that, but one of them is they have considered the virtual, but they'd started school, and some of them are family reasons in those pieces. So there's quite a few reasons. Also, I do hear from some of the families that there's a little bit more flexibility, and their circumstances have changed, so they're working from home now. So they're able to work from home with their children at home.
Anybody who can work at home with their children is a better parent than me, my goodness. I think that is all we have on that, so thank you, Superintendent Davis. That will take us to, sorry, I need glasses and need to locate those. To item 8A, community consultation on the development of a human rights policy, and we will be going to Human Rights and Equity Advisor, Davika Mathur, but before we do that, we're going to go to Acting Director Marsh.
Thank you, through you, Chair Lundquist. Very pleased this evening to bring what the first phase of a lot more work to come to the board in terms of the human rights development of the policy. But I wanted to make a special note of the fact that we have our Human Rights Advisor and Equity Advisor here this evening in terms of the work that she has been doing. She doesn't often come to board meetings, and so many trustees may not have met her, may recall that they met her first last February, and she has been an incredibly active member of Administrative Council in terms of supporting the work we do for human rights. And so I'll turn it over to her, but just wanted to set the context that this is the position that is funded through the Ministry of Education, and in particular the Assistant Deputy Minister of Equity. We report back to achievements of the position through Patrick Case, who is the ADM of Equity at the Ministry of Education, and this is one of the key milestones in terms of the deliverables of a policy for human rights for the district. So I'll turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, and good evening. I'm pleased to be here today to present a report to the board on a recommended action to consult with DDSB communities on the development of a human rights policy. The report and supporting materials are provided in the agenda package, starting on page 19, and there are 3 appendices that provide additional details: a proposed framework for developing the policy and a proposed consultation plan, both of which I'd like to take you through today, and an implementation plan as well. But before I do that, just by way of a quick introduction to the materials, the development of a human rights policy is recommended to meet legal obligations under a number of different pieces of legislation: the Human Rights Code, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, the Anti-Racism Act, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Education Act and related policies and procedures, and it also aligns with the principles of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action. And although the board currently does have some policies and procedures that meet some of the obligations under these policies or under these pieces of legislation, we do recommend consulting with DDSB communities on the development of a human rights policy to bring together all of the various related obligations under those pieces of legislation. The policy and the related procedures are expected to provide guidance and direction on human rights, individual and organizational roles and responsibilities to help identify, prevent, and address all forms of discrimination in DDSB learning and working environments. And a critical part of developing a human rights policy will be to consult and engage with the DDSB's diverse communities, students, families and caregivers, employees and employee groups, and community partners for their input and their perspectives. It's important to honor and include these voices, their knowledge and their perspectives to inform the development of an inclusive human rights policy. So if I may, I'd like to take you through the proposed framework first. It is attached as Appendix A and starts on page 23, and it will also be presented on the screen here as well. And this is really a preliminary outline of what things need to be considered and included in a human rights policy and in related procedures. So the first slide provides background and context, which I've already spoken to. If we could please move to the next slide. There's the background and the context, which I've spoken to, as well as the legislative framework. Next slide. This provides a summary of why we need a policy, and in a nutshell, it supports system responsibilities by setting direction, demonstrating commitment, and defining and clarifying human rights roles and responsibilities. It also supports data collection and decision-making and can help to foster confidence in internal processes like complaints procedures. Next slide. And these are some initial considerations to inform the development of a policy. This includes, amongst other things, looking at what the Ontario Human Rights Commission recommends in their guidelines on developing human rights-related policies, taking a look as well at what other school boards and other organizations have done, and some of the findings of human rights-related reviews, including Peel's review, and considering collective agreement provisions and different models of addressing human rights issues, as well as expected guidance from the Ministry of Education in terms of how best to implement complaints procedures and also how to support policy implementation and rollout. Next slide. This slide is an overview of the proposed policy and related procedures and is preliminary pending those consultations. It proposes one overarching policy that covers a number of human rights related topics with a few procedures to support implementation in the specific areas of human rights, anti-racism and anti-discrimination in all its forms, the duty to accommodate, and addressing issues and complaints, as well as workplace harassment or building respectful workplaces. Next slide. This is just a quick high-level listing of proposed key elements to be included in policy, and it would include organizational statements and commitments, objectives and policy principles, the application and scope, roles and responsibilities, human rights code and legislative requirements, and key human rights concepts and procedural principles. And I'll go over some of those elements in a bit more detail over the next few slides. Next slide. So the first key element is the organizational commitment and rationale, and really this is connected to that overarching legislative framework. And also it's important for the organization to recognize the impacts of various forms of discrimination and the importance of taking anti-discriminatory approaches to address those impacts and to creating positive and respectful workplaces. So really that it's the law, but it's also the right thing to do. Next slide. These are some of the proposed objectives and purpose of the policy around identifying and preventing discrimination, responding to issues and complaints, and focusing on systemic and proactive approaches. Next slide. This slide outlines a few proposed principles to inform the development of the policy and related procedures, with a particular focus on student voice and experiences, and especially those who are most impacted by human rights-related issues. There is also a focus on this work as a shared system responsibility, where we're integrating human rights across all areas and portfolios, and we're addressing disparities and disproportionate experiences and outcomes, and the importance of collecting and analyzing data to evaluate and report on progress. Next slide just covers the scope and application, that it would apply to all DDSB community members and would cover DDSB services, learning environments, employment, and workplace environments. Next slide. This is some of the proposed policy content at a very high level, with further information in the appendices of this at the end of this presentation. It would essentially cover human rights principles, grounds, and areas, roles and responsibilities, and key definitions, including discrimination in its various forms, anti-discriminatory approaches, the duty to accommodate, and key accommodation principles. Next slide covers further policy concepts and content, and includes an overview of steps to resolve issues and complaints, the right to pursue other avenues to address issues, and data collection, evaluation, and communications. Next slide is a very general summary of the consultations, and I'll go through this in a little bit more detail with the proposed consultation plan in a few moments. For the next slide, to develop a communication and evaluation plan for the policy, those will be further developed based on input from the community consultations. The next slide lists the proposed key human rights-related principles that will be spelled out in the policy, and again would cover all forms of discrimination. I won't go through them all here, but they're listed there for your information. The next slide covers the types of discrimination that could be considered under the policy. And the next slide lists the accommodation principles and the duty to accommodate process that would be covered off in policy and procedures. The next slide outlines the key proposed steps in the issue resolution process, again, just a high level. And the next slide is, again, a high-level overview of the steps to take to resolve a complaint. In each step of both the issue resolution and complaints processes would be further detailed in related procedures. I'll stop there for a moment in case there are any questions on the policy framework before moving on to the consultation plan.
Trustees, questions on the policy framework? No, please continue.
Okay, thank you. So the consultation plan starts on page 44 of the package. And the first slide details the objectives of the consultation, and that is to engage communities and to seek their input. And it's also an opportunity to help connect with and build relationships with DDSB communities, for communities to have a voice in the development of the policy, and to share information and increase awareness about human rights, the proposed policy and processes for addressing issues. Part of this consultation process is to provide input on the policy framework to make sure we are covering all of the key elements of things that need to go into policy, and then consulting with communities on the actual policy once it's drafted. And we're essentially seeking input on the framework and what else needs to be considered. And apart from the policy content, we also want to ask, as part of our consultations, who else we need to consult with and how, especially in the current circumstances, so that we aren't missing any voices or perspectives. The next slide lists the 4 target audience groups: students, families and caregivers, employees, and community partners and groups, and we go into a bit more detail on the next few slides. So the next slide is some of the proposed initial planned consultations. I know it's kind of hard to see, but it's looking at students, student trustees, and the Indigenous Student Advisory Committee, our employee networks and affinity groups, our Diversity Council, unions and federations, and all employees from across the organization. And the next slide is additional consultations with parents, families, and community consultation groups. And it's important to note that this is just a summary of the consultations. Not every group is listed. And part of the consultation, as I mentioned, is to identify those groups that may be missing. The next slide is an overview of the consultation approach and timelines. And so again, the proposed plan is to consult on the policy framework and consultation plan now, take that feedback to draft the policy and the related procedures, and consult again on the draft policies in February and March, and then report back to DDSB communities about the results of the consultation and share the final approved policy. The next slides cover some of the ways in which we will consult during the current pandemic, and it includes things like setting up a dedicated phone line and email, posting the framework and plan on our website and inviting feedback, setting up virtual meetings and through email exchanges, through board committees, through thought exchanges and surveys, through written, video, and audio submissions, school newsletters, and other methods as identified through the consultations. And if we're lucky, some in-person meetings and focus groups when those are permitted. And to maximize participation and address consultation limitations during the current pandemic, so for example, the inability for some community members to access internet or the inability to conduct large in-person focus groups, the consultation plan does include multiple opportunities and accessible mechanisms for members of DDSB communities to contribute to and provide input on the development of the policy. And again, consulting on who and consulting on with whom and how best to consult to make sure that broad voices and perspectives are included. And I do want to flag that we recognize that although we are offering multiple opportunities and ways to provide input, some students, and especially those with special education needs, may require additional options to participate based on their individual needs and circumstances. And so we will be collaborating with Inclusive Student Services, the Special Education Advisory Committee, the Grove Advisory Steering Committee, Integrated Special Education Planning Teams, schools, student groups, families, and community partners for their expertise in identifying additional options for those who may not be able to access these methods, and to set up alternative ways to participate based on those individual needs. And this could include, for example, individual small groups or discussion sharing circles while respecting restrictions that are in place due to the current pandemic. In addition, we will also be meeting with the Equity Ad Hoc and Parent Involvement Committees and employee networks and affinity groups who all have close connections with communities to get additional feedback and perspectives on who to consult with and how best to do that, and so that we're offering accessible options to participate. And we will also collaborate with our employee partners to ensure that employees with accessibility needs also have other options to provide their feedback based on their individual needs as well. This slide here provides some of the proposed preliminary consultation questions. Some of these will be reframed slightly depending on the audience, but these are provided to outline the additional information that we're seeking to obtain through the policy framework from a content perspective. And the next slide has additional questions that focuses on the consultation process, as well as how to seek suggestions on how to best support policy implementation, communications, and evaluation, and also asking if we should be asking additional questions through the consultation process as well. The last slide provides an at-a-glance summary of the what, the why, the who, the when, and the how of the consultation plan. And I'll pause there for any questions on the consultation plan before I move on.
We have Trustee Edwards.
I'm really excited about this consultation. It's a long time coming, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think you covered most of my questions as far as input, but I've sort of got two, particularly around you talked about education, but even from the start, what I find within my communities and even some of the questions that I get asked is around, I guess, a misunderstanding that there is no right is absolute or more important than another. that all rights are equally considered, and there's that misconception out there or misunderstanding of how it's applied. And I'm just wondering, when you look at these consultations, are you going to sort of have established that norm of understanding before you get it? Because sometimes it really is the misunderstanding of what human rights code is all about.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. That's a great point, and I think I had been thinking about that in terms of the actual policy and setting out hierarchies, that there is no hierarchy of rights in policy, and as well the concept around competing rights in policy, but I think it's a fabulous idea to include that as part of the consultation process, so I thank you for that.
Okay. And a supplementary. And then the other as well is when you addressed a lot of people participating, but at the very beginning, as far as consultation, when you're actually advertising the consultation out there, how are we addressing our significant English as a second language population to get that feedback? They have to be able to understand it.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Part of the preliminary work before we start the consultations is to ensure that we have a robust communication plan that does reach our various audiences, and that there are simple, easy messages to follow that allow people to understand the process that we're engaging in and how they can participate. And also, again, working with our community partners to identify some of those ways of engaging and communicating with those that may not be able to engage with us in our typical ways, particularly for this policy.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and just knowledge that a PDF is not accessible, and that's one of the biggest things that our particular Ministry of Education is very good at, is sending out a whole bunch of communique in PDFs, and they're not accessible to who their audience is. So, thank you.
So I have a couple of things that I would like to observe about this. I'm a little bit concerned about the way it's being pitched, frankly. And the reason I'm concerned about it is because everybody thinks they understand human rights, and that's often not a shared understanding. So I take Donna's point. I think that's important. But I also think if you ask people questions that are pitched on an academic level, you get different answers than if you ask them questions about their experiences. And both provide really important insight into policy development, in my view. And so I would like to see these community consultations include questions about the experiences that people are having in our system, because that's how we're going to get policy and procedure that actually makes sense to address the realities. So that's one proposition that I think is actually really important. Because I actually think if we talk about human rights up here, we lose sight of what they do every day, and I don't want to lose sight of that, because it's interesting when Donna said she is excited about it. That was not my gut reaction. My gut reaction is I feel a bit of trepidation about it, because my experience has been that these are painful processes. And it's going to require the system to experience some really hard truths and realities. And I don't view that as negative, because I think that's the beginning of building a human rights culture that actually recognizes the inherent dignity of the students and the parents and the staff and everyone else. But I anticipate it's going to be tough, and one of the ways I wonder about getting through some of those tough conversations is an acknowledgement of experience. So that's, to me, a really important piece. So I just wanted to reference that.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, just if I can respond, I think that's a critical point, and I think that will help to reframe some of the way the questions are positioned for certain groups and audiences when we do the consultation plan. So thank you very much for that.
You have anything further on this part? No? Okay.
Almost done. Just have a couple more points. So as part of your package, Appendix C on page 55 provides the proposed policy development and implementation plan and lists pending the consultation, the expected procedures and supporting tools, training and resources that will support the implementation of the policy. And again, the timelines allow for the initial consultation on the framework and plan, and then the draft policy and related materials, and then reporting back with the final policy. So just to wrap up, the development of a human rights policy supports the district's commitments to provide learning and working environments that are safe and welcoming, equitable, inclusive, respectful, accessible, and free from discrimination and harassment. And the policy is expected to help meet strategic priorities and organizational goals and to deliver effective and responsive educational services and employment. And the proposed consultation plan encourages engagement with and input from the DDSB communities so that all community members are invited to share their perspectives on the development of the policy and that the policy is responsive to their needs. And so the report and appendices are respectfully submitted to the board as a recommended action. And thank you very much. I'm happy to address any further questions you may have.
I just have a comment.
Go ahead, Trustee Barnes.
Thank you. I thank you for the presentation. I think this is a very needed policy. We've had to capture the lived experiences of our students within our system. I'm glad that the framework will also give a voice to parents and a way for them to challenge things that are happening in our system that don't fall in line with what they consider their human rights being violated. So I'm looking forward to the consultation process, and I'm hoping that we'll have it out in such a wide format that we'll get great engagement from our diverse communities.
Thank you, Trustee Barnes. So we're going to need a motion to approve the process or framework of the community consultation on the development of human rights policy. We have a mover with Trustee Edwards. Do we have a seconder? Trustee Thatcher, all in favor? I can't see the screen, so I don't know.
I think Paul had his hand up.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Are we
Paul?
having some
Trustee?
discussion about
Oh, there you
motion
go.
now? Because this is standing committee. Will this end up with the board as well?
It will have to go to the board as well, yes.
I just had a comment about it. I noticed that safety is mentioned there, and that will always be priority one. I know it goes without saying, but could that be stated, that safety will always be priority one?
Could that be stated where, Trustee Crawford?
Well, it's part of what they mentioned. And as we're taking consultation, taking in ideas, we don't want to lose the number one priority.
So I don't see that being a human rights concept, and so I guess what I would say, and I'm gonna just observe that there is a motion on the table. It's been seconded. I understand that you have a concern about safety. I'm just not sure that it fits well within the framework of having a discussion about, I mean, certainly as a trustee, you could bring that forward in the context of this human rights consultation.
And, well, actually, I had my hand up before the motion came forward because I did have a couple of questions.
Well, I couldn't see it.
And our trustee is going to be part of the consultation.
Through you, Chair. So most definitely trustees will become aware of the schedule in terms of the consultation process, and those that are the public ones, certainly not the focus groups where it's a smaller group of students and whatnot, but trustees will be aware of all public consultations and most definitely are invited to observe them. The consultation is the community consultation. Trustees' opportunity in terms of framing the policy will be when it comes back to board for their approval.
Okay, thank you. I'm in favor of this then.
Thank you. So can we, I need to go back again. We had a mover with Trustee Edwards, a seconder with Trustee Thatcher, and we were voting. So all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. That takes us to information items and our first student trustee report. And I'm not clear on who we're going to, so it's going to be Logan, Arpita, or Aaliyah. And Logan has his hand up, so we'll go to Logan first.
Thank you. Thank you, and through you, Chair. Throughout this past month, the three of us have developed the overall structure of this year's Student Senate based on elements of the 2017 to 2021 DDSB strategic plan, while also hosting the first ever virtual Student Senate Symposium. The Student Senate, composed of 2 to 3 representatives from each DDSB secondary school, will be meeting on the third Monday of every month. We've decided that we will continue focusing on student voice, well-being, and equity as our 3 working groups to ensure we're engaging all aspects of the school experience.
On October 1st, we hosted the annual Student Senate Symposium through Google Meets. We had 29 participants who engaged in a series of sessions, including team bonding activities, working group brainstorming sessions, and regional breakout calls. We used word clouds to collect senators' perception of student voice, through which many respondents stated powerful and important. And we used Google Jamboards for collaborative discussions about the working groups. In regional breakouts, we discussed how students are feeling about the return to school and the leadership initiatives that are currently in the works.
Based on the feedback forums, the event was well received, and students felt that communicating in smaller groups allowed their voices to be genuinely heard in a safe and comfortable environment. We followed up with the proposal of interacting more frequently as a team. Understanding that optimism was the character trait of September, we wanted to recognize all of our DDSB schools, staff, and students for adapting to this new academic year with open minds and continuous enthusiasm. That concludes our report, and we would be pleased to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you to the student trustees. Do we have any discussion or questions on this report? That might be a first, so you got lucky on your first report. Questions will inevitably come, I promise. Thank you, all 3 of you. That will take us to item 8B on the agenda, update on summer school with Superintendent Nevels.
Good evening, and through you, Madam Chair, I bring forward an information report this evening that can be found on pages 57 to 61 of your agenda. This summer was unlike any other and required staff to be incredibly flexible to the changing landscape of COVID-19. Leaders at continuing education worked tirelessly to mobilize staff in a different direction than they had ever needed to before. They developed new processes to support online registrations, trained staff to prepare for real-time online instruction, and grew offerings in our e-learning program to meet the increased needs of the system. Our ConEd summer school program engaged over 5,800 individual students and employed over 350 staff. And our Grove Community School Partners program brought learning to 100 students, which enabled these students to continue their critical programs while working towards earning their credits. Within the report, you'll find a table which provides a description of each of the ConEd programs and outlines the format that these programs were offered in during the summer. The analysis section highlights the enrollments and success rates of each of the program types. We are pleased with both the enrollment and completion rates for this past summer and are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Superintendent Nevels. Questions or discussion, trustees? We'll go to Trustee Barnes.
Thank you. I just looking at some of the numbers, and I don't know if I am if I'm actually getting them right, but some of the numbers didn't seem to add up when we had the program registrations and completions and then success rate of completions when we had the percentage pieces. So for example, we have registration 651, completed 630, but we still had 100% of the success rate. So I was just wondering about that. I don't know if I was missing something.
So I included those numbers through you, Chair. to represent the students that had registered for the programs, and then those that completed the programs in the second column. The third column is the success rate of those that completed the program. So oftentimes in the summer we have students who register for courses who never actually show for the initial course, or in the initial days of the program, withdraw from the program. So I wanted trustees to see what we call the attrition rate of students who register, as well as students who complete the program. And the third column shows the success rate of those that completed.
Okay, so
Of the students that completed the program, 100% were successful in earning their credits.
Oh, okay. So, okay, sorry, I thought it was just the attending section. And then the other question I had was, we had a ramp program that we ran before, but it wasn't listed on here. I don't know if it's something that we no longer run, or if it's it was just based on this year.
Yeah, so the RAMP program, my understanding, only ran within that 1 year as a pilot project and was not continued past that year.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Barnes. Trustee Edwards.
And I know it might be difficult to compare, but I just know in particular that getting ready for high school is usually a popular program, and I'm just wondering if we actually had more people participate, more students participating virtually than we did in person previously.
Unfortunately, I didn't bring those past numbers with me for that program, but I am more than happy to reference those and share them with the trustees.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you. Stephen, I just had a quick, Superintendent Nevels, just a quick question while we're talking about numbers, and I know that you like to talk about numbers and data. I was just wondering, because I heard from so many families that students, secondary students, were eager to complete a course or two over the summer. I was just wondering if you had any idea about year-over-year comparisons in terms of summer school. Is that too broad a question?
Not at all. It's a little difficult for us to compare previous years to this year. The programs that we had run historically were face-to-face, and this year we had to switch to fully online. So if we just compare e-learning to e-learning, so for the last 2 years we had just over 1,000 students and then 1,300 students last year in terms of July e-learning. As you can see the numbers this year, we had 3,000 completing the program. So there was a significant increase, and part of the increase in e-learning was because we weren't offering our face-to-face recovery programs. The recovery programs this year ran in a real-time format, and that was new for continuing education. Also, the ministry added the upgrading program this year as well that had never been offered before. So some students that may have taken a credit recovery course in the past were just upgrading this year. So it's a little difficult to compare total numbers because of the program differences.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, trustees? I see nothing, so thank you, Superintendent Nevels. As to item 8C on the agenda, Parent Involvement Committee with Superintendent Heather Mundy, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This report can be found on pages 62 and 63 of your agenda and is provided to share the 2020-2021 membership of the Parent Involvement Committee. The purpose of the Parent Involvement Committee is to support, encourage, and enhance parent engagement at the board level to improve student achievement and well-being. We have filled all vacancies except for our 2 northern positions and will continue to seek participation in those opportunities. Thank you. That is the report for your information.
Thank you. Do we have questions or discussion, trustees? Trustee Edwards.
I'm not sure I'm the alternate trustee on the list for the committee. It's got my name there, and I don't believe I am.
I will go back, and through your chair, we will go back and double check that and make sure we have the right information.
It's a better answer than I was going to give. I'm like, well, you are now, but I was just kidding. Okay, so So we will inquire and correct the record. Okay, thank you. Trustee Morton?
Thank you, and through you. I'm just wondering how we're reaching out to those northern parents. Do they fully understand what this committee does? It's a very important committee, and I'd love to see northern representation there.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Lundquist. One of the things that we will be sending out information to all our SCC chairs, and included with that when we reach out to the northern schools, because specifically it's the 2 northern vacancies, we will be encouraging the SCC chair to reach out to their committee. We are just finalizing 2 videos, one on School Community Council and one also on the Parent Involvement Committee. So I'd like to have those videos finalized so that when we reach out, that can be shared at the School Community Council meeting, and that may help add information, because it is the Parent Involvement Committee members speaking about why they're involved and the importance of it.
And I do hope that we do have people come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? No? Thank you, Superintendent Mundy. That brings us to item 9, information item 9D, revised student device plan with Interim Associate Director Carla Kisco.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This report can be found on page 64 of your package. You may recall that during our budget discussions this year, we identified the need to revisit our Chromebook plan, our program, given its annual impact on the board's budget. With increased dependency on technology, we did give consideration to the entry level or grade level that the program starts. We also gave consideration to the refresh cycle, which is currently 3 years, and we gave consideration to the number of repairs and the fact that repairs tend to land on the board and really do hit the board annually considerably. David Rule is here with me this evening. He's our senior IT official, and he'll highlight some of the main components of the proposed plan. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, and good evening, trustees. Just to begin, a couple of key points about our current stock levels in terms of technology for students. We started this year with approximately 8,000 devices in stock. The majority of those came from the intended technology. My apologies. The intended technology for the grade 10 refresh and the grade 2 to 5 cart refresh. Of those 8,000, we have deployed over 5,000 of them to our DDSB at home students, and a large number of them are now being used also as repair swaps for devices that come in as damaged. We have put in an order for 5,000 devices, which are expected to be arriving in November timeframe. We should see those, about 4,500 of those will be added to our allocation for stock repair, and also to be put into put into some schools to top up the carts. 500 of those 5,000 devices are intended to be held back for our in the event that we have schools that need them in terms of a pivot to online learning. Current risks and limitations that are facing us right now. Right now, with the pivot to online learning worldwide, there is a shortage of technologies, particularly Chromebooks, because of the cost of the devices and the ease of deployment. We are also experiencing, our partners are experiencing parts delays and repairs. So typically in a year, what we would do is any devices that were recovered from the grade 10 refresh or the cart refresh, we would take what was usable from those and repairable from those, and we would put them into our swap swap pool to swap out devices that have been damaged. Unfortunately, this year, because we didn't do a grade 10 refresh or a cart refresh, we're now in a position where we don't have that particular stock. So we have been using new devices for this purpose. The proposed model, this has left us in a position where we needed to, where we really needed to consider what we are going to do moving forward in order to keep ourselves with stock levels of technology for our students to use to continue learning. The proposed model is, as Interim Associate Director Kisco mentioned, moving from a 3-year to a 4-year model. What this does is moves us from a deployment to grade 7s and 10s to a deployment of a 1-to-1 model to all of our grade 5 students and all of our grade 9 students every year. The provisioning of these devices would be to provision the devices only, and the warranty would be through a third-party vendor with no damage coverage for these devices. They would be, when the program is in full swing, the devices would be mailed directly to students' homes rather than coming through the schools and through IT services for deployment, to simplify the process of getting devices and the logistics of getting devices into the hands of students as quickly as possible. Families would request the devices through an online portal when they are eligible for a device, so in grade 5 and grade 9, or for students new to the board from grade 5 to 9. The model for our youngest students, kindergarten to grade 1-2 splits, would continue to be iPad tubs, which would be centrally provisioned. And for our grade 2 to 4-5 students, they would remain on Chromebook carts as they are right now. This model would be unchanged in terms of the support mechanisms and to what is happening right now. SIA devices would continue to be provisioned using the existing model and support structure. There would be a contingency fund available for application for those families who are in need should their devices be damaged. As a part of our transition to this new model, typically the funds we purchase for next year out of this year's budget to provide us enough time to be able to acquire the devices, provision them, and get them delivered out to schools. The new model would be more of a purchase in the year of, which allows us to leverage the funding that had been budgeted for the 21-22 school year to be leveraged this year for devices, which helps us to start the transition this year, which will also support us in providing devices now or in this school year to our students. So what we would look to be doing was provisioning devices to our grade 6, 9, and 10 students who are not on SIA devices under this new model beginning this winter. So we would order the devices shortly in order to arrive sometime in the winter. Devices would be delivered directly to schools to allow us to provision out to students and recover any loaner devices that are current, or 1-to-1 devices in the case of 9-10s that are out there, to be pulled back, and then those devices would be able to either be put back onto classroom carts to support our in-person learners, or taken back and put into our swap pool for repairs to sustain the program until the end of the year. In the long term, that would be our interim step to get devices going and out into the hands of students as soon as possible. Our long-term model would be as of the summer of 2021, where the parents would log into a parent portal in order to request their device, confirm their address, and then it would be shipped directly to their homes. And that is the summary of the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. We will go to Trustee Thatcher.
Yes, David, I just wondered, I guess I wasn't very clear about the carts that you said, no refresh to the carts. Just, could you repeat that part for me? Sorry.
Yes, this school year, We did not refresh the carts. So we already have full cart deployment to all of our grade 2 to 6 classrooms. 1/3 of those carts were due for a refresh this year, because every year we refresh 1/3 of our carts. This year we did not do that refresh, so those carts continue to use the 4-year-old devices.
Thank you, David.
We'll go to Trustee Forbes and then to Trustee Barnes.
Thank you. I just had a question generally about a 4-year technology refresh schedule. And I was just wondering, do we anticipate any impact on performance and any impact to as a result of this?
Chromebook devices are very slim devices, which means that in terms of their performance, they tend to last a long time. So the 4-year-old devices that are out there now function. Where we start to see some failures with the physical aspect of the devices. However, if devices are treated well, we have seen them last a long time, and so 4 years is a feasible time frame and what many boards use as their benchmark for the lifespan of the device.
Oh, thank you. And I just had a quick question about the 2021 2022 impact. So we usually, and I remember seeing this in the actuals of our budget numbers when they came in, we would usually see devices purchased in the spring time frame for the coming school year. So we're going to utilize those funds now to make sure we have stock in the hands of students early in the new year or when they come in. But did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And do we anticipate that has an impact or for the school year coming, or not really, because the devices will be in the hands of students who would have received them in the coming school year?
A little bit of both. So with the existing model, we have to order well in advance, which means that the money has to be moved to the year in advance. With the new model, where deployment is going to be happening over the summer, we anticipate that the funds will be able to come out of the year that we're in. So next year's budget, where we would have been budgeting for the 22-23 school year, we'll actually be able to leverage those funds for the 21-22 school year going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Trustee Barnes.
Thank you. My question was covered by Trustee Forbes. I just wanted to find out about performance. If we were doing a 4-year refresh, if we were going to have some sort of a way for students to sort of plug in somewhere and refresh those devices. As we know, software changes so often, so I just wanted to check on that. And I'm glad that we are looking at more sustainability for this program, because this year shows just how important that program actually is. So thank you guys very much for that.
Thank you.
I think it's important, through you, Madam Chair, to highlight a couple of features. One is these devices would, under this new program, get to students in grade 5 as opposed to grade 7. So we're looking at actually expanding the one-to-one program to actually capture grade 5 students onward. There's a cyclical replacement program, or the program would be every 4 years. So the devices from grade 5 to the end of grade 8, in grade 9 you'd be refreshed with one to take you to the end of your educational experience in Durham. The other thing too that's really important to note is because they are devices that David has mentioned, we're experiencing a lot of repairs that are really, it's about cracked, basically cases, cracked the glass on the front, the face. So these devices, we're hoping that with more of an ownership model, that there will be a different commitment or attention paid to students who are given a device. They're given the device for this period of time, and hopefully they'll take good care of that device. And, you know, again, we're anticipating that our repair costs will go down, and well, they will go down considerably because they won't be automatically repaired. The savings to the bottom line budget with an expanded program to more students starting in grade 5 all the way to grade 7 with a 4-year recycle period is $2 million to the bottom line. That's the savings. So it's sizable. It's a significant movement, and I think, you know, for that reason we're bringing it forward and sharing what we hope to be putting in place shortly. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I just have a question about the MiFi costs. It says we're paying $30,000 a month for MiFi? Every month we're paying $30,000 a month, and we did not get funding for that.
Yeah, and that's just part of the technology budget, and again, those are the surprise elements. And when you don't have access in some areas, there are costs that we are incurring right now. Hopefully the ministry is paying a lot of attention to these kinds of costs. We're more than willing to share all of our costs for accessibility and just device expenditures and support expenditures.
Well, there's a reason I'm highlighting it for sure. So I appreciate that. It's important that the cost of running the programs are out there and clear. So thank you for that. Trustees, anything further? Trustee Edwards?
Trustee Crawford.
Just on that point is that there seems to be a misconception at the provincial level that the internet and MiFi problems are only in the north, and that's just to prove that we're spending this amount of money per month proves that it's not just in the north. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. I see nothing further. Trustee Crawford, you're on the screen. Did you have an observation you wanted to make? I feel like when you're there,
yes, I did.
Okay.
You sort of took my question on the $30,000. I'm assuming that's for the 5,000 Chromebooks only.
So through you, Madam Chair, no, there's 850. I think at one time I might have misrepresented that number and indicated it was lower than that, but it's an 850 MiFi devices, which are those wireless sticks that basically allow students to access the internet. That's the $30,000 a month expenditure we're incurring.
So it's not directly related to the 5,000 Chromebooks. That's for everything.
That's correct.
Okay, and the other thing is we underwrite the loss and damage to these. What would be the annual cost of that?
And I would have to ask, if I could, David, to comment. We pay for repairs. The cost to us for repairs is $1.8 million a year.
And does that include loss?
And through you, Madam Chair, to David.
Yes, loss will be included in that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Lundquist.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, sorry about that. I know the sound is not good.
That's okay. Go ahead, Trustee Barrett.
So if we are saving about $2 million with this program, what is the approximate annual cost of the program for Chromebooks in its entirety? And what does the ministry actually give us for that program?
Thank you for your question. We'll go to...
So again, through you, Madam Chair, the annual cost of devices themselves and the repair costs listed in the report are shown on page 64. It's a $6 million device spend plus, and that will that basically accounts for about 15,000 devices that are purchased annually, and another $1.8 million for repairs. The cost of technology in terms of support costs and all else included, I'm going to have to ask David to please comment on that. I don't have that figure available in front of me.
Thank you. David?
Apologies, just for clarity, what is the question?
What is the sort of all-in costs of the devices and the repairs and managing the technology costs for a year?
In terms of just the Chromebook program, we do spend about $7.8 million a year in purchasing costs and repair and maintenance.
And then the second part of the question was, how much does the government provide to the board to cover those costs?
I don't have those numbers with me, but happy to look that up and respond back to the trustees.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Interim Associate Director Kisco.
And through you, Madam Chair, the amount that we received as an incremental amount from the government this year was $500,000 towards this technology generally. So that was $500,000 that was provided as part of the COVID dollars. Technology, really, I want to say we also received $1 million in our allocations of the GSNs this year.
So, Michael, it sounds like we're short by about $6.some-odd million.
Yes, I appreciate that and appreciate the information. It just goes to show the Durham board has some of these dollars, and we took that initiative a while back. But the ministry cannot expect that every single board is going to come up with a shortfall of $5 million plus to be able to fund the program. But I appreciate the information. It's good information. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Trustee Barrett. I see no further questions. On that happy note, we will go to an update on virtual board meetings, item 9F, with General Counsel Patrick Cotter, please.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The purpose of the report is just to provide trustees with an update on the legislative landscape around attendance at board meetings. The emergency order for school boards that was passed at the start of the COVID crisis ended for school boards on September 1st, 2020. So the board is now back to the regular rules regarding meeting attendance. So under Section 228 of the Education Act, together with Regulation 463/97 under the Education Act, a member cannot miss 3 consecutive regular meetings of the board. However, those can be attended electronically or in person, but the member must be physically present for at least 3 regular board meetings annually, commencing December 1st of each year. Because of the shutdown this past year, the requirement to attend 3 regular meetings for the current period is suspended, but the clock will begin to run again on December 1st, 2020. There is no provision in the legislation for a member to be absent due to illness or disability, but the Human Rights Code has quasi-constitutional force, and therefore, in my opinion, would be engaged should a member not be able to attend for code-related ground. Subject to any questions, that is my report.
Thank you. General Counsel Cotter, do we have any questions on this trustees' discussion? No, so we will take that as information. Thank you. We will then go to item 9G on the agenda, the OPSPA report with Trustee Edwards, please.
Thank you. On Saturday, September 26th, the Ontario Public School Board held its annual general meeting virtually. Just a brief update on elections, in that Kathy Abram was re-elected as president. Michael Barrett was re-elected as first vice. Kathleen Woodcock was his second vice. Along with that, the members of the 2 policy and education programs committees were were elected, and so Patrice Barnes is representing Central East on the education programs. And the chair of the Central East region, I was elected as the chair. And because of that election, there is an impact on the director membership for the DDSB. I can no longer be the DDSB's voting member, as I represent the Central East region on the executive. So we must replace myself, the voting member, as well as an alternate for those positions. For the remaining of the term, because we know that in December we do our organizational meeting, so those positions our directors are re-elected at that point in time. So it is my recommendation, and I would like to move that just because it's just for the remainder of the term, that we, Patrice Barnes, as she was the second director, be moved into the position of a voting member for the DDSB, and then we will have to elect another member and alternate. So that's the first motion is to move Patrice Barnes as the voting member for the remaining of the term for OPSPA.
Okay, so let's deal with that motion before we move to the second part of it, if that's okay. So we have a motion to appoint Patrice Barnes as the voting member for the DDSB for the remainder of this term. Patrice, are you willing to accept that before I ask for a seconder?
I am, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that motion? We have Trustee Noble. Do we have a discussion? I see none.
Madam Chair? Sorry, I apologize for the sound quality.
It's okay. Go ahead, Trustee Barrett.
Okay, I'm opposing this motion because we have a structure that has an alternate. I believe that we should fulfill our responsibility. Somebody was elected as an alternate. That alternate should step forward to filling Donna's position, and we should deal with this in December at our annual elections. And I think we should just follow process. That's why we have alternates. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Noble is the alternate, I'm advised.
Sorry, I am the alternate. I was elected last December, but at this time right now I'm not able to attend any OPSPA meetings in person or virtually just due to my declining health.
So the alternate is unable to fulfill the role for personal reasons. So in that...
Then I withdraw my comments and Trustee Lundquist. So.
Okay, so I appreciate that from both trustees. So I think what I would like to do then is, if there is no further discussion on the motion, the objection's been withdrawn. So we have a motion that's been seconded. It was to appoint Patrice Barnes as the voting member for the DDSB for the remainder of the term. I see no further discussion, so I would ask trustees to vote. If you're in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Thank you for stepping up, Patrice. We appreciate it. So now we need an alternate still, is that correct?
You still need a second director at the table until the end, until the end of the term. I can see leaving the alternates at this point in time, but we still need, which really is just one meeting in November.
Okay. Do we have a trustee who would be willing to step up for the one meeting? Trustee Morton. So can we have a motion? Go ahead. Trustee
Was there an
Barnes.
alternate for me this one? That's my position.
There is not a motion on the table with respect to your position yet. I'm sorry, I need to seek clarification here.
Patrice is now taking my position. We have two positions, directors on the board. One is a voting member, one is just another director position on the board. And then we usually have alternates for this. Right now, we've replaced Patrice as my position. Now we have to replace Patrice as the second director position on the board until the end of the term.
Okay, that helps. So we have Carolyn Morton, who has expressed a willingness to fulfill that role that Patrice was in. Trustee Templeton, I see your hand up.
I was just going to volunteer if Carolyn Morton turned it down.
Well, fortunately, Trustee Morton did not turn it down. So in that case, do you want to require us to hold an election, or can we just move that Trustee Morton be appointed? I'm fine either way, to be clear. I'm not expressing a preference. It's one meeting. I need you to express a view, Trustee Templeton.
I'll withdraw and allow Carolyn Morton to step forward.
Perfect, thank you. So we have a motion to appoint Trustee Morton as the second director for the remaining term. Do we have a seconder? Trustee Thatcher, any discussion? Seeing none, can I get a vote? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you for stepping up, Trustee Morton. It is much appreciated. And thank you for walking us through that, Trustee Edwards. I would like to observe that item 9E on the agenda was withdrawn at the request of the trustee, which is why it was not dealt with this evening. And that brings us to committee reports. Do we have any committee reports? No, I have no correspondence. Nothing has been raised as other business, so that brings us to a motion to adjourn at a brilliantly early hour for us. Trustee Templeton, second by Trustee Barnes. All in favor? Thank you all for your time.